Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 26th of October and we are going to deal with two very important topics which are in news. The first topic is with respect to the Bhutan-China border talks. The officials from Bhutan were there in Beijing and they wanted to discuss on two aspects. The two aspects, first was demarcating the border and second was establishing diplomatic relations with each other. Now Bhutan does not have diplomatic relations with China. In fact, Bhutan has not established diplomatic relations with any permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. So both of these were discussed. On the first aspect, demarcating the border is demarcated, but there is dispute over that border. China, as always, wants to claim more territory which is inside Bhutan, and in this topic we will see the China claimed line which is inside Bhutan claiming more territory from Bhutan, and they are bilaterally settling this dispute. Talks since the 1980s have been going on between Bhutan and China to settle this dispute, but unfortunately the dispute has not been settled till now. The second topic is Monetary Policy Committee, MPC. Monetary Policy Committee is a committee under RBI. The responsibility of this committee is to roll out the monetary policy every, 2 months now. Monetary policy is rolled out with the objective of containing inflation in the country. Its sole objective is to contain inflation in the targeted range, that is 2 to 6% or 4 plus minus 2%. This is the target which the MPC has to keep inflation in. Why was this in news? Because a member of NPC has given a statement that the Indian economy is expected to grow in the coming future. Also, he has said a caution, or he has also given a word of caution, that majority of the demand which is being created in the Indian economy is coming from the domestic household sector. So we should not be too happy. Demand from other sectors also should be coming in, or demand from other sectors also should be growing. So we can say that that person was cautiously optimistic on India's growth story. But here in this topic, we will see what MPC is, what is its formation and all, composition and all. We'll see everything here in this topic. The Bhutan-China talks on resolving the border conflict. Particularly the western border of Bhutan, which it shares with China in the neighboring Chumbi Valley region, is a major cause of concern between both the countries since long. Border talks have been happening since the 1980s and 1990s to resolve the conflict, but unfortunately the conflict has not been resolved till now. India is also, I would say, a kind of stakeholder in these talks. However, India was not invited, or India was not part of these talks, we need to understand. But why I am saying that India is a stakeholder? Because whatever the demarcation of border will be on that western side of Bhutan, it will definitely have a considerable amount of impact on India, because India's Chicken's Neck corridor or the Siliguri corridor is very near to that western border of Bhutan with China. Or I can say that India's Chicken's Neck corridor is very much near to the Chumbi Valley region. Another aspect of the talks between Bhutan and China was the establishment of diplomatic relations with each other. Yes, Bhutan and China do not have diplomatic relations with each other. They do not have formal embassies over there in each other's countries, which I would say is a big void in relations between both these countries. So Bhutan was also keen to establish diplomatic ties with China, and so was China. Now, does this have an impact on India? Yes, it can have an impact on India if Bhutan forges close ties with China, because Bhutan is kind of a buffer state between India and China. And that is why we are covering this topic, because it has considerable amount of implications on India's sovereignty, territorial integrity and overall security. Because Bhutan going more close to China simply means that China coming more close to the borders of India, which definitely we do not want. So let us look into the details of this particular topic. The 25th round of talks were held. Previously was in 2016, 1984, 1996, 2004. These years when talks happened, actually it started in 1984 only. And this clearly signifies that the issue between Bhutan and China have been long standing. Now the key takeaways of this meeting were Bhutan and China talked about resolving their long standing border dispute with each other. Second was Bhutan wants to establish diplomatic relations with China. Bhutan does not have any diplomatic relations with any of the P5 countries. P5 countries: USA, UK, France, China, Russia. These are permanent 5 members of the United Nations Security Council. So Bhutan does not have any. This is just a fact, an additional fact which was mentioned in the newspapers. So I have been mentioning it here. Now let us see that what is the dispute, the boundary dispute between both these. Now this is Bhutan. This is that Chumbi Valley region. This is Sikkim. We can say that this is a tri-junction. Bhutan, this is India, this is China. And this line which you are seeing is the China claim line, means China is claiming additional this territory which is part of Bhutan. And to settle this dispute, talks since 1984 have been going on between both these countries. And here is this Siliguri corridor, or I would say the Chicken's Neck corridor, which is the only land route which establishes connectivity with the Northeast India. If this goes, the connectivity to the Northeast India will be cut off. That is why this is very important, and this is in proximity to this Chumbi Valley. If China gains influence over here, increases its influence over here, it will be a problem for, or it can be a problem for us. Now the timeline of this dispute, and we will definitely keep India in picture, because we can understand this topic in a holistic manner with keeping India in picture. Without keeping India in picture, we will not be able to understand the issue well. And this is something which is required for UPSC as well. 1890 was the year when the Anglo-Chinese Treaty was signed. Anglo means the Britishers, Chinese the Chinese. This Anglo-Chinese Treaty demarcated the border between Sikkim, Bhutan and Tibet. So this tri-junction which we just saw, Sikkim, Bhutan and Tibet, China. So this border demarcation was done by the 1890 agreement. 1910, the next year into picture, is Treaty of Punakha was signed between Bhutan and the Britishers. Bhutan became a protectorate state under Britishers. Britishers had to guide the foreign policy and defense policy of Bhutan. Now what is a protectorate state? Protectorate state simply meant that Britishers were giving protection to Bhutan in case of any foreign attack on Bhutan. Means any attack on Bhutan happens, Britishers will be fighting that attackers on Bhutan, on behalf of Bhutan. In return, Bhutan has to give its foreign policy and defense policy to the Britishers. Means Bhutan could not take independent decisions with respect to its foreign policy and defense policy. That is simply the meaning of protectorate state. So Bhutan became a protectorate state under the Britishers with the signing of this Treaty of Punakha in 1910. 1947, India became independent and Bhutan was among the first countries to recognize India as a sovereign country. This was there. Now we need to understand one more thing, that when Bhutan became a protectorate state, here in 1907, the present dynasty which is there, which is ruling, the Wangchuk dynasty, was established. Wangchuk dynasty was established in 1907. After that, Treaty of Punakha was signed. where Britishers had to guide the foreign and defense policy. And guide simply meant that you cannot take independent decisions, you are not sovereign here. 1949, when India is independent, Bhutan has recognized us as an independent country. Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation signed between India and Bhutan. Now, according to this Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation, now India had to guide, according to Article 2 of the treaty, India had to guide Bhutan's foreign and defense policy. Now, this guide and the guide under Treaty of Punakha were different. Although the word is same, guide, but the meanings were different. Now, the interpretation of this guide, Treaty of Friendship, what does guide refer to? Here, India accepted the sovereign and independent status. There, the Britishers did not accept the sovereign and independent status of Bhutan. Here, we accepted the sovereign and independent status of Bhutan, but advised that Bhutan, in matters of external and military affairs, seek assistance from India. Now, this is a big question in the present conflict, or in the present, I would say, boundary resolution and establishing diplomatic relations with China. Will Bhutan do this? Let's see. Then comes next 2007 year. This Treaty of Friendship was upgraded to Treaty of Actual Friendship in 2007. Now, what was the difference between Treaty of Friendship and Treaty of Actual Friendship? We said to Bhutan that your foreign and defense policy will not be guided by us now. You can, do or make your independent decisions, take your independent decisions without seeking assistance from India, with any country in the world except China. Means your foreign and defense policy with China has to be guided by India. You need to seek assistance from India. Elsewhere, you want to have any kind of foreign relations or defense relations, you can have. The Treaty of Actual Friendship, India and Bhutan would cooperate with each other on matters of national security. It allowed Bhutan to have its independent foreign and defense policy except with China. Bhutan was allowed to import arms without seeking India's permission. This was all there in Treaty of Actual Friendship. 2017, one major issue happened on this tri-junction. That issue was called as the Dolam issue. Now, let us go back to that map. Yes, this one. This is basically the disputed area, and you can see this portion over here. This portion is called as the Dolam Plateau. Dolam Plateau partially is in China, since here the boundary line is going, partially is in China, partially is in Bhutan. So in 2017, the Chinese military started doing up a build-up over here in the Dolam Plateau and started claiming that part of Dolam Plateau which was in Bhutan. And the problem started. Actually, we should understand one more thing, that the China's five-finger policy. China says that Tibet is the palm and there are 5 more territories which are ours. It is our claim on these territories. Why? Because people belonging to the same racial stock, they are staying over there in those territories. These 5 fingers, out of these 5, 3 are in India. Let's start from the eastern side. Arunachal Pradesh, the first finger. Second finger, Sikkim. Third finger, Bhutan. Fourth finger, Nepal. And fifth finger is Ladakh. All these 5 fingers will one day be part of China because they were once in history part of China. Why they are claiming this? Because people belonging to the same race, they are staying in this region. So they want to take all these in China, and Bhutan being part of the 5-finger policy of China definitely is there on the cards, and that is why that dispute is there with Bhutan. Chinese also said that they do not recognize the 1890 Anglo-Chinese Treaty, which demarcated the boundary between Sikkim, Bhutan and Tibet, if you remember the first point we started with. So this was there. In 2017, when the Chinese invasion started in Dolam Plateau, Indian army retaliated and the contest was now PLA versus IA. Remember that Bhutan's foreign and defense policy had to be guided by India. So India intervened. So that matter was settled. The Chinese army retracted back after that incident. In 2020, some villages have been established near Dolam Plateau by China and near Arunachal Pradesh. In December 2022, the Chinese were seen constructing a ropeway in the Dolam Plateau region. That is also, I would say, concerning because China's build-up is increasing in that region. So this is basically Dolam, which you see, this dot, partially in Bhutan, partially in, I would say, China. Now in this map, if you see closely, the red line, this one, is basically China claiming this portion of Bhutan. This means entire this is China. And this magenta line which you are seeing, this one, or I would say now this black line which I am drawing, it is the line which is claimed by India and Bhutan that this is the boundary. So this part of Dolam comes in Bhutan and this is China, this is India. So this particular line, the black line which I have drawn, is the Bhutan and India claim line. This red line is basically the China claim line, which makes all this portion in China. India and Bhutan's version, this is the line, the black line which I show. Dolam is in Bhutan. China's version, this line is the boundary which makes Dolam in China. This is the difference. And this has to be settled. Now India on the talks, what has India said? See, India was not invited. However, one of the persons who attended these talks was an ambassador to India. But India was not invited, no Indian officials were invited because it was a bilateral talk between Bhutan and China. But India till now has said that we are closely, watching this, but India has said it in the past that it closely follows the talks and these pertains to its security, especially near the tri-junction point near Dolam, because this Dolam is very much close to the Siliguri corridor or Chicken's Neck corridor. The Ministry of External Affairs is not commented anything on the present meeting. So closely follow this news. If there is any comment by the Ministry of External Affairs, you need to take into consideration that comment. By that comment, you will understand the mindset of the India's response to this particular situation. What has been Bhutan's, I would say, take on this? Now, the Bhutan's Prime Minister, Dr. Shering, said that we hope to see a line being drawn between Bhutan and China. So this side of line will be Bhutan, this side of line will be China, because this dispute has been long standing. On diplomatic ties, on establishing diplomatic ties, because this was the second aspect of the talks between Bhutan and China. Theoretically, the Prime Minister said, theoretically, how can Bhutan not have any bilateral relations with China? The question is when and in what matter or what manner these relations will be there. And obviously, India has to guide Bhutan in this according to the Treaty of Actual Friendship. This is something which needs to be understood. Now, up to what extent India will guide and up to what extent Bhutan will adhere to India's guidance, let us leave it to time, because we will get to know it with time only, that how much Bhutan is listening to India or how much Bhutan is being guided by India. Okay. So this is something which you need to understand properly. The Monetary Policy Committee. Now, a member of the Monetary Policy Committee was quite optimistic about India's growth story. But he also said that India's growth story is depending upon the demand being created in the Indian economy. The demand largely is coming from domestic household sector, whereas it is not coming from other sectors. It should have been coming from other sectors as well. If it comes from other sectors, then the demand will be diversified, which is a more healthier sign for any economy to grow and sustain. Because if one sector, the demand falls, demand is sustained in the other sectors. This is a normal assumption. So dependency on one particular sector, in this case, that is the household sector, should not be there. that can cause certain problems for India in the future. So that is why we are saying that the member of the Monetary Policy Committee was cautiously optimistic about India's growth story. That is the exact word. Monetary Policy Committee is one such committee which is responsible for maintaining inflation in the country. Inflation within the limits 4 plus minus 2%, that is 2 to 6%. This Monetary Policy Committee did not exist before 2016, was formed in 2016 only, and was given a task of maintaining inflation and nothing else. It is a 6-member committee. Ex officio chairman of this committee is the chairman of RBI. 3 members are from RBI, including the chairman, and 3 are nominated by the government. Those people serve for a 4-year tenure without renewable tenure, that is, means they cannot be reappointed. So let us look into the details of this statement given by the member of Monetary Policy Committee. RBI MPC, that is Monetary Policy Committee member, Mr. Jayant R. Verma, is cautiously optimistic about India's economic growth, citing improved consumer confidence and indicators indicating growth momentum. However, he warns that the outlook remains fragile due to country's disproportionate dependence on household spending. That is there, that means the demand is coming from the household sector only, because people are spending there only, and other demand components, they are actually not up to the mark. So this is basically what his statement was. But here let us understand a few things about, I would say, Monetary Policy Committee. Monetary Policy Committee was formed in the year 2016. Before that it did not exist. Now Monetary Policy Committee was tasked with one and only thing, that was managing inflation in the country, and inflation should be within this limit, 2 to 6%, this bracket, the inflation should be there. Now let us understand the scenario before 2016. But साथ ही साथ we will be understanding that how is inflation there, मतलब what are the factors responsible for inflation. Inflation, first of all, is due to supply demand mismatch. If supply is less, demand is more, obviously inflation will be high, prices will rise. If demand is less, supply is more, prices will fall. So if there is this mismatch, inflation will happen. This is a simple logic. And why demand will be there? Demand will be there when people will be having more money in their hands. If people are having more money in their hands, they will spend, and that will generate demand. So Monetary Policy Committee basically rolls out the monetary policy. Monetary policy regulates the money supply. Money supply is reduced, demand will be reduced, inflation will be reduced. This is the simple logic in this. But yes, inflation will be high if money supply is high. And if money supply is high, economic activity will also be good, because money will be in circulation, people will be spending, people will be demanding, generating demands, people will be producing to fulfill those demands. This is the simple, I would say, logic you need to follow. Inflation is high, money supply is high, economic activity is also high. When we reduce the money supply, when it is reduced, inflation definitely will be reduced, but economic activity will also be reduced. This is one drawback. And before 2016, RBI was always in a dilemma. while rolling out monetary policy. Monetary policy was rolled out before 2016 also, but there was no monetary policy committee to roll it out. So before 2016, RBI was always in a dilemma that if we go for targeting inflation and we reduce the money supply, we will also be reducing economic activity. If we do not want to reduce economic activity, inflation will be there. So it was like this for them. Either choose this. If they choose targeting inflation, economic activity comes down. If they choose for promoting economic activity, inflation comes down. And both of these things were their responsibility. So it was always in a dilemma. Then the government in 2016 came out with an idea. They told RBI that leave economic activity to us. You don't, go for targeting that. You only go for targeting inflation, and for that purpose we will be forming a committee in RBI, that is Monetary Policy Committee. In 2016 it was formed with the only objective of targeting inflation, nothing you have else than this. If inflation will be targeted, you means economic activity will happen because people will be left with more money with them also. So like this it is going to be there. So this was the logic of forming the Monetary Policy Committee. Now what is Monetary Policy Committee? The Monetary Policy Committee is a committee constituted by the central government and led by the Governor of RBI. Ex officio chairman of Monetary Policy Committee is Governor of RBI. Monetary Policy Committee was constituted as per section 45 ZB under the RBI Act of 1934, which clearly means that Monetary Policy Committee is a statutory body. The first meeting was held on 3rd of October 2016. You can see 2016 was the year when it was formed. Monetary Policy Committee was formed with the mission of fixing the benchmark policy interest rates, that is the repo rate, to restrain inflation within the particular target level. Now repo rate, if it is increasing, then money supply reduces. You need to understand it in this way. If repo rate is coming down, then money supply will increase, inflation will also increase. The committee determines the policy interest rate required to achieve the inflation target, that is this repo rate. Next, MPC is required to meet at least 4 times in a year. Means every quarter at least it should be meeting, but since the last few years it is meeting almost every 2 months. A monetary policy committee is being, a monetary policy is being rolled out. The quorum means the minimum members required for a meeting to happen is basically 4 members. Total members are 6 members in this monetary policy committee, and if 4 members are present, meeting will happen. Each member of MPC has 1 vote. Now 6 members, everyone has 1 vote. What if there is this situation 3 versus 3? In that situation, the governor has a second or casting vote. Governor means the chairman of MPC, governor of RBI. And once every 6 months, the Reserve Bank is required to publish a document called the Monetary Policy Report to explain the sources of inflation and the forecasts of inflation for 6 to 18 months ahead. Now every 6 months this has to be submitted. There is another report which has to be submitted by Monetary Policy Committee. Don't get confused. This is a regular report which has to be submitted. Another report which has to be submitted by Monetary Policy Committee is the report which has been mandated under the section 45ZN of RBI Act, and that report is submitted when for successive 3 quarters the inflation is not maintained in that bracket of 2 to 6%. Then the Monetary Policy Committee will submit a report to the Government of India highlighting the reasons for inflation and the timeline that in which and what time this inflation will be tackled. That is another separate report, and this report is separate report. The composition of the committee. The committee comprises of 6 members, as I already told you, including the chairman, 3 officials from RBI including the chairman, and 3 external members nominated by the Government of India. Now Governor of RBI acts as the chairperson ex officio of the committee. Members nominated by the government hold office for a period of 4 years from the date of appointment. None of the central government nominees, means these 3 people, are eligible to be reappointed, means only once they will be appointed. The committee meets quarterly, that is every 3 months it meets minimum. Decisions are taken by majority vote. with each member having a vote. In case of a tie, chairman has a casting vote. Already seen this. Now, what is section 45ZN? Now, according to section 45ZN, in case the RBI fails to meet the inflation target is what? 2 to 6%. This is the inflation target. It has to present a report to the government explaining the reasons for failure. In the report, the central bank will have to mention remedial actions it proposes to take, an estimated time within which the inflation target will be achieved following the timely implementation of proposed remedial actions. All these the government has to take, and this report is a separate report, not that periodic 6-month report which it publishes. And a remarkable fact about this report is that RBI did not submit, or I would say inflation was targeted within 2 to 6% until 2022. Means 2022 was the first time when RBI submitted this kind of report to the government of India, because inflation for 3 successive quarters was hovering around 7% in that category. Means above 6% it was. And the reasons for inflation last year were many, like COVID crisis, we were coming out of it, the Russia-Ukraine war, which increased the prices of fuel, fertilizers and food. Then, climate change impacts were there, heat waves were there, which led to less productivity of agricultural crops. All these were the reasons for inflation last year which happened, and due to which the Monetary Policy Committee had to submit this particular report under section 45ZN of the RBI Act for the very first time to the government of India. And this is all from today's topics. We've covered 2 topics today. The China-Bhutan border talks, very much important for India. I've brought India into picture and discussed, that is very much needed. Second topic was this Monetary Policy Committee, the basics of Monetary Policy Committee I've covered. Why was it in use? We also discussed that. And I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative pieces. Till then, you guys know very well what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste, Jai Hind.